People ask me when I knew something was wrong. I tell them. The moment my daughter looked at me like I was a stranger, and prayed I'd keep it that way. This story is inspired by real-life submissions. Names and identifying details have been changed. I was sitting at a red light on Maple Street when I saw her. At first, I thought it was just another stranger. You know how it is in a city. You learn not to stare, not to get involved. The woman was standing at the median with a cardboard sign, one arm cradling a baby wrapped in a thin yellow blanket. Her hair hung in greasy strands across her face. She looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than tired. But something made me look twice. The way she shifted her weight, the angle of her shoulders. I'd know that posture anywhere I'd watched it grow from childhood. Watched it harden through a difficult marriage. Watched it disappear 3 years ago when she stopped returning my calls. "Courtney!" I rolled down my window. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe. The baby couldn't have been more than a few months old. "Courtney, honey, is that you?" She turned toward my voice, and for just a second, our eyes met. I watched recognition flash across her face, saw her mouth open slightly. Saw something that looked like relief, or maybe terror. Then she looked away. Not gradually, not politely. She jerked her head to the side like I'd slapped her and took 3 steps back from my car. "Miss, I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, her voice flat and mechanical. Behind me, someone honked. I ignored them. "Courtney, it's me. It's Mom. What's happening? Where have you been? Whose baby? I don't know you." She was speaking louder now, and I could hear the shake underneath the words. "Please, just go." The baby started to cry. That thin, desperate sound newborns make when they're hungry or cold or both. Courtney bounced automatically, the way mothers do. But she wouldn't look at me. She was staring at something past my shoulder. No, she was staring at nothing. Like if she just looked hard enough at the empty air, I would disappear. An SUV pulled up beside me in the right lane. The driver, a woman in yoga clothes, glanced at Courtney, then at me. Her expression was the one people get when they see someone elderly getting confused in public, that mix of pity and impatience. "Ma'am, the light's green," the yoga woman called out. "She's probably just, you know." She tapped her temple. Then, quieter but not quiet enough. "These homeless people, they'll say anything." I felt my face go hot. The car behind me honked again, longer this time. I put my window down further, leaning out. "Courtney, please. Just tell me you're okay. Tell me the baby's okay." "I can help," I said. "I don't know you." She was almost shouting now, backing away faster. "You're confused. I'm not Tom, not who you think I am." That's when I heard it. Someone in the parking lot behind her, an older man getting out of a pickup truck. "She's old. She won't notice." The words hit me like cold water. Courtney was already turning away, hiking the baby higher on her hip. She moved with the kind of speed that comes from practice, from knowing exactly how to vanish into a crowd. But she was moving too fast, and her shoulder bag slipped. I watched it happen in slow motion. The bag's cheap zipper split, and something small and silver tumbled out onto the asphalt. A phone. One of those prepaid flip phones they sell at gas stations. It skittered across the pavement and landed near the median. Courtney froze. She looked at the phone, then at me, then back at the phone. Her face went absolutely white. The light turned yellow. I grabbed my door handle, ready to get out. Ready to pick up that phone and chase her down and demand answers. But another car pulled forward and blocked my view. By the time I could see again, Courtney was running, actually running. The baby bouncing against her chest, her cardboard sign abandoned on the curb. The phone was still there. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the look on her face. Maybe it was the way she'd said, "I don't know you," like someone had taught her the words. Maybe it was just the fact that I'd spent 3 years wondering if my daughter was alive. And here she was, 20 feet away, pretending I didn't exist. I threw my car into park, hazards on, and got out. The yoga woman shouted something about blocking traffic. Someone else honked. I didn't care. I walked to the median, my knees aching the way they do when I move too fast, and bent down to pick up the phone. It was still on. The screen was cracked, but it was on. And there was a voicemail notification. I pressed play before I could stop myself. The speaker was loud enough that I heard every word, even over the traffic noise. Courtney, I know you think you can hide, but I always know where you are. Andrew's keeping me updated. You pull any shit, you try to make yourself visible, I'll take everything. You understand me? Everything. Stay quiet, stay small. I'll call you when I'm ready. The voice was cold and controlled. Arnold. I'd only met him twice before Courtney cut contact, but I recognized the tone immediately, that careful, measured anger that never had to yell because it knew it had already won. The message was dated 3 days ago. My hands were shaking. I stood there in the middle of Maple Street, cars honking around me, holding my daughter's phone like it was made of glass. The yoga woman had given up and driven around me. A bus went by, and I felt the heat from its exhaust. Courtney was gone, vanished into whatever network of bus stops and shelters and sidewalks she'd been surviving in while I thought she'd just, decided she didn't need a mother anymore. But now I had the phone, I had the voicemail, and I had a name. Andrew. Arnold's brother. The one who'd always smiled too much at family dinners, who'd always had an excuse ready, who'd sent me a card after the divorce, saying he hoped Courtney would find clarity. The phone buzzed in my hand. A new text message. Where are you? Did someone see you? I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I got back in my car, put the phone in my purse, and drove home. Because if Arnold was watching my daughter, if Andrew was helping him, if Courtney was so terrified that she'd deny her own mother in public, then somebody needed to start keeping receipts. I sat in my kitchen for 2 hours that night, just staring at that phone. The voicemail played on repeat in my head. Arnold's voice calm and cold. I always know where you are. My daughter's face at that traffic light, blank with practiced fear. The way she'd backed away from me like I was dangerous. Like loving her was dangerous. I made coffee I didn't drink. I paced between the kitchen and the living room. Every time I picked up the phone to call the police, I stopped. What would I even say? My daughter pretended not to know me. They'd think exactly what that yoga woman thought. Confused old lady. Can't tell strangers from family. She's old. She won't notice. But I had noticed. And I had the phone. Around 10 o'clock, I opened my contacts and scrolled to Grace. We'd worked together at the county clerk's office back in the 90s. Before she moved to the hospital, she picked up on the third ring. Florence? It's late, honey. You okay? Grace, I need your help. My voice cracked. I found Courtney. Silence. Then, found her where? At a stoplight. She was, she was holding a baby. Grace, a baby. And when I called her name, she acted like she didn't know me. Wait, slow down. You're saying she had a baby? When? Where's she living? I don't know. She ran. But she dropped her phone, and there's a voicemail on it from Arnold. I took a breath. He's threatening her. He says Andrew's keeping him updated. He told her to stay quiet and stay small. And Grace, she's terrified. I heard Grace exhale slowly. Send me that voicemail. Can you do something with it? I mean, legally. Maybe. But Florence, listen to me. Her voice dropped lower. If Arnold's still in her life, still controlling her even though he left 3 years ago, this isn't just about a bad marriage. This is a pattern. And if Andrew's involved, they've got infrastructure. Infrastructure. Ways to keep track of her. Ways to make her think she has no options. I see this at the hospital all the time. Young women who come in alone, who flinch when we ask for emergency contacts, who have older men listed on their paperwork even though they're not married anymore. My stomach turned. You think that's what happened to Courtney? I think you need to check. Does she still have accounts with Arnold's name on them? Is he still listed anywhere official? Because if he is, he can get information. He can follow her through the system. But they're divorced. Divorced on paper, maybe. But paper doesn't mean anything if nobody updates it. Grace paused. Look, I'm working reception tomorrow at County General. Bring me that phone. Let me see if Courtney's been through our system recently. If she had that baby here, there'll be records. Grace and Florence. Don't underestimate how people will treat you when you start asking questions. You're sick. They're going to assume you're confused, or meddling, or both. I thought about the yoga woman's tap temple. You know? I'm not confused. I know you're not. But they don't know that yet. After we hung up, I went through the phone more carefully. There were only 5 contacts saved. A number labeled A that I assumed was Arnold. Another labeled A to Andrew, probably a pizza place, a crisis hotline, and one that just said safe. I almost called the safe number, but something stopped me. If Courtney had a safe contact, someone she trusted, I didn't want to scare them off by appearing out of nowhere. Instead, I looked at the call log. Dozens of incoming calls from A over the past 3 months. Most went unanswered. The ones Courtney did answer lasted less than 30 seconds. Then I noticed something else. The phone plan was registered to an address I didn't recognize, not Arnold's old place, not anywhere Courtney had lived before. I pulled up Google Maps and typed it in. It was Andrew's house. The phone bills were going to Andrew's house. My hands started shaking again. Why would Andrew be paying for Courtney's phone? Why would he have access to her account, her call logs, her location data? Arnold had left her 3 years ago, walked out after the divorce was final, and moved 2 states away. Everyone said he was done, that Courtney could finally breathe. But he wasn't done. He'd just moved a leash from his hand to his brother's. I opened my laptop and searched for Arnold's social media. His Facebook was public elf photos, political memes, pictures of him at bars with women who looked younger than Courtney. In one photo from 2 months ago, he was tagged at a restaurant in Nevada. The caption read, "Living my best life." But if he was in Nevada, how was he watching Courtney? How was he getting updates? Andrew. It had to be Andrew. I clicked over to Andrew's profile. It was locked down, friends only, but his profile picture showed him standing in front of a bank. I zoomed in. The sign behind him read, First National Trust Services. Trust Services. Grace's word echoed in my head. Infrastructure. I screenshot everything and sent it to my own phone. Then I plugged Courtney's phone into my charger and set it on the kitchen table where I could see it. It buzzed twice more that night. Both times, the screen lit up with messages from A.T. Did you get your mail today? Call me back. Need to confirm something about your account? I didn't respond. I didn't know what Courtney usually said, and I couldn't risk tipping them off that someone else had the phone. But I read every word. I memorized the tone, and I started to understand the shape of the trap my daughter was living in. Around midnight, I finally went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there thinking about Courtney's face at that stoplight. The way she'd said, "I don't know you," with so much fear underneath it. She wasn't just hiding from Arnold. She was hiding with me. And tomorrow, I was going to start figuring out how deep this went and who else knew she was being kept invisible. Because somebody had filed paperwork, somebody had updated addresses and kept Arnold's name on forms and made sure my daughter stayed connected to a man who'd abandoned her. Somebody thought a 67-year-old woman wouldn't notice. But I'd spent 40 years filing documents, tracking paperwork, finding things people thought were buried, and I was just getting started. The bank was cold inside, all glass and polished floors that made every footstep echo. I'd been banking at First National for 30 years, back when it was still called Valley Savings, and the tellers knew your name. Now, it was all automated kiosks and young employees who looked at you like you'd wandered in from a nursing home. The woman at the information desk smiled that tight, professional smile. "How can I help you today?" "I need to speak with someone about account records." I kept my voice steady. "It's about my daughter." "Do you have her account number?" "No, but I have her name and social security number." The smile got tighter. "Ma'am, we can't access someone else's account information without proper authorization, even for family members." "I understand that, but I'm not asking to access it. I just need to know if there are any joint accounts still listed under her name with her ex-husband." She blinked. "That's still account information. It's public record if they're divorced." "It's not public record with us." She was already looking past me, toward the next person in line. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" I pulled Courtney's phone from my purse and set it on the counter. "My daughter dropped this 3 days ago. There's a voicemail on it from her ex-husband threatening her. I have reason to believe he's still accessing her financial information through accounts she doesn't know about." The woman's expression shifted slightly. Not sympathy, exactly. More like the look people get when they realize you might actually cause a scene. "Ma'am, I really can't. Can I speak to a manager, please?" She hesitated, then picked up her desk phone. 2 minutes later, a man in his 40s appeared. Gray suit, name tag that read David Chun, branch manager. "I understand there's a concern about account access." He gestured toward a private office in the corner. "Why don't we talk in here?" The office was small and smelled like coffee and printer toner. He sat behind the desk and folded his hands, and I could already see him preparing the speech. The one about privacy policies and legal procedures, and how these things can be confusing for people who aren't familiar with banking regulations. People my age, he meant. "Mrs. Florence? Florence Mitchell. My daughter is Courtney Mitchell. She went back to Mitchell after the divorce from Arnold Brennan." He typed something into his computer. "And you're concerned about joint account access?" "I'm concerned that her ex-husband is still monitoring her finances, even though they've been divorced for 3 years." "Do you have evidence of this?" I played the voicemail. Arnold's voice filled the small office. "I know where you are. Andrew's keeping me updated." David's expression didn't change, but his fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. "Who's Andrew?" "Arnold's brother." "Andrew Brennan. He works in trust services." Something flickered across David's face. "Here, I don't know." I saw a photo of him in front of a bank sign. First National Trust Services. David was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mrs. Mitchell, I want to help you. But I need you to understand that unless you have power of attorney or your daughter comes in herself, I can't show you specific account details." "I'm not asking for details. I'm asking if you can verify whether Arnold or Andrew Brennan have any connection to accounts in my daughter's name." He looked at me carefully, like he was weighing something. "These situations are delicate, especially when there's been documented abuse. So you've seen this before." "I've seen a lot of things." He turned back to his computer. "Let me check something." His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. I watched his eyes scan the screen, saw the exact moment they stopped. "There's a trust account," he said slowly. "Small monthly deposits. It was set up 7 years ago as a joint marital trust, managed by a third party. The managing party is listed as Andrew Brennan." My chest tightened. "But they're divorced." "Divorce doesn't automatically dissolve trusts. Someone has to file paperwork to close them or transfer management. And nobody did." Nobody did. He leaned back in his chair. "The deposits are small, $200 a month. It's the kind of amount that flies under the radar. Not enough to live on, but enough to maintain access." "Access to what?" "Information. Every time a deposit goes in, the managing party gets a statement. Address updates, transaction history, any changes to contact information." He met my eyes. "If your daughter opened a new account somewhere, moved to a new address, anything that touched this trust Andrew would know." I felt sick. Can we close it? Your daughter would have to come in and request it herself, with identification and a notarized statement. And if she's too scared to do that? David was quiet. Then he did something I didn't expect. He printed something and slid it across the desk. It was a transaction summary, just the basics. Dates, amounts, the trust account number. I'm showing you public information about trust activity, he said carefully. Nothing that violates privacy policies. Just dates and amounts. If you were to take this to a lawyer, they might be able to file a motion on your daughter's behalf. I took the paper with shaking hands. Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. He waited until I looked at him. People underestimate older women. They think you won't understand the systems, won't know how to ask the right questions. But I grew up watching my grandmother navigate her husband's estate after he died. And I learned something. Women your age know exactly how paperwork works. You built these systems. My throat was tight. There's one more thing, he said. That trust. The deposits don't come from Arnold. They come from a business account registered to a property management company in Nevada. But the signatories on that account are both Arnold and Andrew Brennan. They're working together. They're keeping her connected, keeping her visible to them, invisible to everyone else. He stood up. If you need anything else, you didn't get this information from me. But if your daughter wants to come in, I'll make sure she talks to someone who understands what's happening. I left the bank with the paper folded in my purse, my hands still shaking. $200 a month. Just enough to keep Courtney desperate. Just enough to make her show up in their system every 30 days. And Andrew had access to every detail. I sat in my car and pulled out Courtney's phone again. There was a new message from A2. Deposit clears tomorrow. Make sure you're reachable. They were summoning her. Using money as bait. Using the system as surveillance. And somewhere, Arnold was watching through his brother's eyes, knowing exactly where Courtney was, exactly how small she'd stayed. I started the engine. Grace had told me not to underestimate how people would treat me. The bank manager had just proved her right hand, then surprised me by seeing past it. But now I had proof, dates, amounts, names, and I had a question that needed answering. If Andrew controlled the trust and Arnold controlled Andrew, who actually owned the property company sending those deposits? Because somebody was paying to keep my daughter trapped. And I was going to find out who. Grace was waiting for me in the hospital cafeteria. 2 cups of coffee already on the table. You look terrible, she said. I found the trust account. I slid into the booth across from her. Andrew's been managing it. $200 a month, just enough to keep tabs on her. Grace's jaw tightened. That's exactly what I was afraid of. What do you mean? She pulled out her phone and opened a photo. It was a hospital form, the kind they make you fill out in triplicate. Emergency contact information, insurance details, next of kin. Courtney gave birth here 4 months ago. September 12th. A girl, 6 pounds, 3 ounces. My breath caught. 4 months ago? I pulled the records this morning. Had to call in a favor with records? Told them it was for a welfare check. She zoomed in on the form. Look at the emergency contact. Arnold Brennan. His name, his phone number, an address in Nevada. But they're divorced. Doesn't matter. The form was filled out 3 years ago when Courtney came in for something else a fall. Looks like someone updated her file when she came back pregnant, but nobody removed Arnold's information. Grace looked up at me, which means every time she came in for prenatal appointments, every time something changed, a notification went to that number. He knew she was pregnant. He knew everything. Due date, blood type, when she went into labor. Grace's voice was tight with anger. And here's the thing, Florence, someone had to authorize keeping that contact active. Hospital policy changed 2 years ago. We're supposed to verify emergency contacts for patients who come back after major life changes. Divorce counts as major. So someone bypassed the policy. Or someone convinced the intake nurse that Arnold should stay on file. She swiped to another photo. Look at this. It was a consent form, dated a week after Courtney gave birth. Authorization for the hospital to share medical records with a third party for insurance purposes. The third party was Andrew Brennan, listed as family financial trustee. I felt cold. They used the trust as an excuse. Smart, isn't it? Present yourself as the person managing her finances. Say you need medical records for insurance claims. Most intake workers won't question it, especially if you're polite and have the right paperwork. But Courtney would have had to sign this. Grace shook her head. Look at the signature. I looked closer. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain. Like someone had signed it while heavily medicated or exhausted or both. She'd just given birth, Grace said quietly. She was alone, probably terrified, definitely in pain. Someone put this form in front of her and she signed it because that's what you do when you're that. Vulnerably sign whatever they tell you to sign. I thought about Courtney at that stoplight, backing away from me with fear in her eyes. Can we revoke it? She'd have to come in herself, file a formal request, show ID, probably fill out more paperwork. Grace looked at me carefully. Florence, I need to ask you something. When you saw Courtney the other day, did she seem okay? Physically? I mean, she was thin. Really thin. And the baby's underweight? I checked the discharge notes. They kept them an extra day because the baby wasn't gaining properly. Grace's voice dropped. There's a note from a social worker. She flagged Courtney as high risk for postpartum complications. Possible housing instability. They knew she was homeless. They suspected, but without Courtney confirming it, without her asking for help, they couldn't do much. And with Arnold listed as emergency contact, with Andrew on the paperwork as trustee. Grace trailed off. It looked like she had family support. It looked like she was covered. But she wasn't. She was trapped. Grace reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And Florence, I hate to say this, but I've seen how this plays out. Women like Courtney, young mothers with controlling exes, they get lost in the system. Everyone assumes someone else is handling it. The bank thinks the hospital's monitoring her. The hospital thinks she's got family support. And meanwhile, the people actually watching her are the ones she's afraid of. I pulled out the paper David had given me, the trust transaction summary. The deposits come from a property management company. In Nevada, Grace studied it. Arnold's in Nevada. He owns property there. Or Andrew does. Or they both do. I felt the frustration rising in my chest. They've built this whole system to keep track of her. And everyone just lets it happen because the paperwork looks legitimate. That's how abuse works when you've got money and time. You don't hit someone where people can see the bruises. You hit them with documents and bank accounts and emergency contact forms. Grace took a sip of her coffee. You make them invisible. A woman in scrubs walked past our table, glanced at us, kept moving. The cafeteria was busy with the lunch. Rush nurses grabbing sandwiches, doctors on their phones, visitors looking lost. Nobody was paying attention to two older women having coffee. There's something else, Grace said. She pulled out another paper, this one partially redacted. I shouldn't have this, but the social worker made a note. She tried to talk to Courtney about resources shelters, assistance programs, legal aid. Courtney refused everything. Said she couldn't access services because it would alert people she was trying to avoid Arnold and Andrew. Because if she applied for housing assistance or food stamps or anything official, it would create a paper trail. Her address would update in government systems. And somehow, Andrew would find out. I stared at the form. At my daughter's refusal documented in black and white. How do we break it? I asked. How do we get her out from under this? Grace was quiet for a moment. Legally, we need to remove Arnold from every system he's still in. The hospital, the bank, anywhere he's got access. Then we need to freeze the trust, or transfer it, or close it completely. And realistically, we need Courtney to believe she can do it without Arnold destroying her life. Grace met my eyes. That's the hard part, Florence. We can file all the paperwork in the world, but if she's too scared to show up, too scared to put her name on anything official, none of it matters. I thought about the voicemail again. Stay quiet, stay small. What if we don't tell her? I said slowly. What if we start removing Arnold and Andrew from the systems without her knowing? Just ... quietly update things, file motions, revoke authorizations. That's risky. If they notice, if they realize someone's interfering, they'll come after me. I felt something settle in my chest, something hard and determined. Let them. I'm 67 years old. What are they going to do? Intimidate me with paperwork? Grace smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're assuming they'll see you as a threat. More likely, they'll dismiss you as a confused old woman who doesn't understand what she's doing. Good. Let them think that. Florence, I'm serious. Everyone already thinks I'm too old to understand banking systems and hospital policies. The woman at the information desk looked at me like I'd wandered away from a care facility. I leaned forward. So, let's use that. Let them underestimate me while I pull their system apart piece by piece. Grace studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, but we need to be smart about this. Document everything. Keep copies. Don't do anything that could backfire on Courtney. Agreed. And Florence. If this goes sideways, if Arnold or Andrew figures out what you're doing, ... double quotes, she didn't finish the sentence? I know. I stood up, gathering the papers. But right now, my daughter's living on the street with a 4-month-old baby because she's too terrified to be visible. And 2 men are keeping her there using forms and accounts and emergency contact lists. I thought about David at the bank, printing that summary for me. About Grace, pulling records she probably shouldn't have accessed. I'm not the only one who sees what's happening, I said. And I'm not going to be the only one who does something about it. Grace walked me to the parking lot. Before I got in my car, she pulled me into a hug. Be careful, she whispered. I will. But as I drove home, I knew careful wasn't going to be enough. Because somewhere, Arnold was sitting in Nevada, confident that he still controlled my daughter's life from 2 states away. And somewhere closer, Andrew was managing accounts and updating forms and keeping Courtney connected to a man who'd abandoned her years ago. They thought they'd built something unbreakable. They didn't know I'd spent 4 decades learning exactly how these systems worked. And they definitely didn't know I'd kept every receipt. The legal aid office was in a strip mall between a dollar store and a tax preparation service. I'd called ahead, explained I needed advice about financial coercion. The receptionist had sighed like I was the 10th person that day asking for free help, which I probably was. She'd given me a 4 o'clock appointment with whoever's available. The waiting room smelled like old carpet and desperation. A young mother sat in the corner with 2 kids, filling out forms. An elderly man dozed in a plastic chair by the window. I took a seat and pulled out the folder I'd assembled the bank statement. The hospital forms, printed screenshots of Arnold's social media. At 4:15, a door opened and a kid who looked about 12 called my name. Mrs. Mitchell. I'm Ryan Okafor, 2nd-year associate. He shook my hand and led me to a cramped office. You mentioned financial coercion on the phone. It's about my daughter. I sat down and opened the folder. Her ex-husband is still controlling her life through accounts and paperwork, even though they've been divorced for 3 years. Ryan pulled out a yellow legal pad, already looking slightly overwhelmed. Okay, let's start with the basics. What's your daughter's name and age? Courtney Mitchell. She's 32, and she's aware you're here. No, he blinked. Mrs. Mitchell, I can't provide legal representation for someone without their consent. I'm not asking you to represent her. I'm asking what can be done to remove someone from official records when they're using those records to stalk and threaten. Ryan set down his pen. That's actually a good question. He looked younger when he was thinking, less like a lawyer and more like a student. Let me see what you've got. I walked him through it. The trust account. The hospital emergency contact. Arnold's voicemail. Andrew's role managing everything from behind the scenes. Ryan's expression shifted as I talked. He started taking notes faster. This is sophisticated, he said finally. They've created a surveillance network using legitimate systems. Can we dismantle it? Some of it, yes. The hospital contact can be updated with a written request from your daughter. The trust is trickier. That'll require a court order or her direct involvement to dissolve. What if she's too afraid to get involved? He tapped his pen against the legal pad. Then we'd need to prove she's under duress. File a protective order, maybe, or demonstrate that the trust is being used for coercive purposes. I have the voicemail. That helps. But, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to be honest with you. This kind of case, it's hard to prosecute because everything looks legal on paper. Andrew's managing a trust he was legally authorized to manage. Arnold's listed as emergency contact because someone, presumably your daughter, signed a form 3 years ago. The deposits are from a legitimate business account. But he's using it to threaten her. I believe you. But proving it in court means getting your daughter to testify, to show up, to make herself visible. He looked at me carefully. You said she's been homeless. For at least 4 months. Maybe longer. With a baby? Yes. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, there's something you should know. In cases like this, where there's ongoing financial control after divorce, it's almost always part of a larger pattern. Emotional abuse, isolation, economic control, they don't just stop when the marriage ends. They just, change shape. I thought about Courtney backing away from me at that stoplight. So what do I do? First, we file a motion to freeze the trust pending investigation. I can do that. With the evidence you've got, the voicemail creates probable cause. Second, we submit revocation forms to the hospital, signed by you, as next of kin. Requesting Arnold's removal from emergency contacts? Will they accept that from me? Maybe. Probably not. He grimaced. Hospital policies are strict about patient consent. But if we file it alongside the trust motion, it creates a paper trail. It shows there's a dispute, which makes it harder for Andrew to claim everything's fine. What about the property company? The one sending the deposits? Ryan pulled up something on his computer. Nevada Secretary of State database. Let me check. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Okay. Brennan Property Solutions LLC. Registered agent is Andrew Brennan. Officers are Arnold Brennan and Andrew Brennan. They own 4 rental properties in Las Vegas. They're landlords. They're using rental income to fund the trust. Which means every month, when that deposit hits, it's technically coming from their business. They can write it off, claim its family support, and maintain access to all of Courtney's information through the account. I felt sick again. How long would it take to freeze the trust? 3 weeks? Maybe 4? We'd need to file the motion, serve notice to Andrew and Arnold, wait for a hearing date. And in the meantime, they'll know someone's interfering. They'll get the notice in the mail and realize your daughter has help. He looked at me steadily. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to prepare you for what might happen. If Arnold and Andrew realize you're behind this, they might escalate. They might put pressure on Courtney. They might let them pressure me instead. Ryan stopped. I'm sorry. I'm 67 years old. I don't have a trust account tied to them. I'm not hiding on street corners. If they want to intimidate someone, they can try intimidating me. I leaned forward. But right now, my daughter thinks she has to stay invisible to stay safe. and I'm going to prove to her that's not true. He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled out a form. Okay, let's start the paperwork. We spent the next hour going through everything. Ryan made copies of my documents, had me sign affidavits, explained what would happen once the motion was filed. One more thing, he said as I was leaving. The way you're describing this, the way Andrew's embedded himself in all these systems, that takes time and planning. It's not something you do casually. What are you saying? I'm saying they've done this before. Or they've studied how to do it. Which means they'll have contingencies. He handed me his card. If anything happens, if you get contacted by either of them, call me immediately. Don't engage, don't respond, just document and call. I took the card. You think they'll come after me? I think they'll try to make you look unstable. Confused? They'll say you're an elderly woman interfering in your adult daughter's life. He smiled grimly. It's what I'd do if I were them. I walked to my car thinking about that. About how easy it would be for Arnold and Andrew to paint me as the problem, the overbearing mother. The confused old lady who couldn't accept her daughter's choices. Courtney's phone buzzed in my purse. Another message from A2. Compliance review tomorrow. Need updated address. They were tightening the leash. I sat in the parking lot and typed out a message to Grace. Motion filed. Clock's ticking. Her response came 30 seconds later. Good. Don't go home alone tonight? I hadn't thought about that. About whether Arnold or Andrew might already know I'd been asking questions. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed a gray sedan 3 cars back. It stayed behind me for 6 blocks. Then it turned off, and I told myself I was being paranoid. But I wasn't. Because somewhere, Andrew was getting notified about unusual activity on accounts he managed. And somewhere, Arnold was learning that someone was pulling at the threads of his surveillance network. They just didn't know yet that I was the one pulling. And by the time they figured it out, I'd already have half their system in pieces. The address on Andrew's business registration led me to a townhouse complex in Riverside Estates. I didn't plan to go there. But 3 days after filing the motion, I still hadn't heard from Courtney. And the gray sedan had appeared twice more, once outside the grocery store, once idling near my street. Grace thought I was imagining things. Ryan said to document it but not engage. I drove past the townhouse once, slowly. It was nice in that bland, suburban, way beige siding, neat lawn, generic landscaping. A black BMW sat in the driveway. And mounted above the front door, angled toward the sidewalk, was a Ring camera with its little blue light blinking. I parked 2 blocks away and sat there, hands shaking on the steering wheel. What was I doing? What did I think would happen if I knocked on that door? But I kept thinking about Courtney's face. The way she'd backed away from me like I was dangerous. The baby crying in her arms. I got out of the car. The walk to Andrew's door felt longer than 2 blocks. Every step, I expected someone to stop me, to ask what I was doing in this neighborhood. But nobody did. It was 3 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Everyone was at work or inside with their air conditioning. I rang the doorbell. Nothing happened for 30 seconds. Then a voice came through the intercom, male and irritated. Can I help you? I'm looking for Andrew Brennan. Silence. Then, who is this? Florence Mitchell, Courtney's mother. The silence stretched longer this time. I looked up at the Ring camera, knowing he was watching me, studying me, trying to figure out what I wanted. I don't know any, Courtney, the voice said finally. That's interesting, because your name is on her trust account, and her hospital records. And you're listed as managing party for deposits that come from a property company you co-own with your brother. More silence. Mrs. Mitchell. The voice was calmer now, controlled. I think there's been some confusion. You should probably, there's no confusion. I have copies of everything. The trust documents, the hospital authorizations, the voicemail Arnold left threatening my daughter. I stepped closer to the camera. And I filed a motion 3 days ago to freeze the trust, and remove both of you from her official records. You what? You'll get served next week? I wanted to tell you myself. The intercom clicked off. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting to see if he'd open the door. Part of me hoped he would. Part of me hoped I'd get to see his face when he realized I wasn't going away. But the door stayed closed. Instead, Andrew's voice came back, tighter this time. Mrs. Mitchell, you're making a mistake. Whatever Courtney told you, she didn't tell me anything. She wouldn't even talk to me. She was too scared. Scared? That's ridiculous. We've been helping her. The trust, the support payments, that's all for her benefit. Then why is Arnold still listed as emergency contact? Why does he have access to her medical records and her location updates? Why is he leaving voicemails telling her to stay quiet and stay small? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I looked directly into the camera. And you should know that I'm not confused. I'm not senile. And I'm not going to stop until my daughter is free of both of you. The intercom crackled. Then Andrew said, very quietly, you're out of your depth, Mrs. Mitchell. These are complicated financial arrangements. You don't understand what you're interfering with. I understand perfectly. You've trapped my daughter using paperwork and bank accounts. You've made her think she can't escape because you'll always know where she is. My voice was steady now, stronger. But you made one mistake. What's that? You assumed I wouldn't notice. You assumed an old woman wouldn't understand how trusts work, wouldn't know how to file motions, wouldn't be able to connect the pieces. I smiled at the camera. You assumed wrong. The front door opened. Andrew Brennan was shorter than I expected, mid-40s, thinning hair, polo shirt tucked into khakis. He looked like every middle manager who'd ever condescended to me at a bank or a doctor's office. Mrs. Mitchell. He didn't come outside, just stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame. I think we should talk like reasonable adults. I'm listening. Courtney is ... unstable. She's made poor choices, financial and otherwise. The trust exists to protect her from herself. Arnold and I, we're trying to help by threatening her. That voicemail, if there even is a voicemail, is probably taken out of context. Arnold can be blunt, but he cares about Courtney. He left her. He left a toxic situation. There's a difference. Andrew's tone shifted, became almost gentle. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're worried about your daughter, but sometimes family dynamics are more complicated than they appear from the outside, especially when someone's been dealing with mental health issues. Don't. I cut him off. Don't try to make this about her being unstable. I've seen the paperwork. I know what you've done. You've seen paperwork you don't understand. He stepped onto the porch now, closing the door behind him. And you've filed a motion that's going to hurt Courtney more than help her. If that trust gets frozen, she loses her support payments. She's living on the street with a baby. Mrs. Mitchell, do you really want to take away the only income she has? My stomach twisted. I hadn't thought about that. Andrew saw it on my face and pressed forward. See, this is what I mean. You're acting out of emotion, not logic. You're going to make things worse for her because you don't understand the full picture. Then explain it to me. The full picture is that Courtney signed all of this voluntarily. She agreed to the trust terms. She listed Arnold as her emergency contact. She's an adult who made adult decisions, and now you're trying to override those decisions because you don't like them. He was good. I could see how this would play in court. The concerned family member trying to provide structure. The interfering mother who couldn't accept her daughter's autonomy. If everything's voluntary, I said slowly, then Courtney can revoke it any time she wants. Right. In theory, yes. So why hasn't she? Andrew smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd seen all week. Maybe you should ask her that. If you can find her? The threat was soft but clear. We know where she is. Do you? I'll find her, I said. I'm sure you will. You seem very determined. He glanced at his watch. Now, If you'll excuse me, I have work to do. And Mrs. Mitchell? Next time you want to talk, call my lawyer. His number's on the motion response you'll be getting. He went inside and closed the door. I stood on his porch for another moment, staring at the Ring camera. Then I turned and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from rage. Because Andrew had just confirmed everything. The casual threat, the condescension, the assumption that I'd back down once I realized how complicated things were, and that smile, that cold, certain smile that said he'd already won. I got in my car and drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over. My chest was tight, my breath coming too fast. Grace called. "Where are you?" "I went to Andrew's house." "You what?" I confronted him, told him about the motion. He tried to make it seem like I was the problem, like I was hurting Courtney by interfering Florence. "You can't do that. You can't contact them directly. It undermines everything." I know. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. "But Grace?" He threatened her. He said, "If you can find her," like it was a challenge, like they're hiding her on purpose. They probably are. So what do I do? Grace was quiet. "Then you keep pulling the threads. The motion's filed, the hospital's been notified, the bank knows something's wrong. You've started the process. Now you let the system work. And if the system doesn't work fast enough, then we find another way." Her voice softened. "But Florence, you have to be smart about this. Don't give them ammunition. Don't let them paint you as unstable or aggressive or old and confused." "Yeah, that?" I sat up and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. 67 years old, gray hair, lines around my eyes. They saw someone easy to dismiss. They had no idea what was coming. Courtney called me at 2 in the morning. I'd been asleep for maybe an hour when the phone rang. Unknown number. My heart jumped. "Mom?" Her voice was so small I barely heard it. "Courtney? Honey, where are you?" "I can't tell you that." She was crying, trying not to. "Did you really go to Andrew's house?" My stomach dropped. "How did you know?" "He called me. Said you were causing problems. He said if I don't get you to stop, they'll cut off the payments completely. The trust payments. I need that money, Mom. It's the only thing keeping us." Her voice broke. I sat up, turning on the lamp. "Courtney, that money isn't help. It's a leash. They're using it to track you, to control where you go. I know that." She was almost shouting, then caught herself. "I know what they're doing. But I don't have a choice. If I try to get real help, they'll know. Welfare, housing, assistance, everything requires records. And Andrew sees all of it. Not anymore." I filed a motion to freeze the trust. Silence. Then, "You what?" "I got a lawyer. We're removing them from your records. From the hospital, from everything." "Mom, no. You can't do that. It's already done." "Then undo it." She was panicking now. "You don't understand what he'll do." When I tried to leave the first time, Arnold got Andrew to lock my credit. They reported my car stolen, even though it was mine. They called my work, said I was unstable, and I lost my job. They made me invisible, Mom. They'll come after me instead of you. That's not better. Yes, it is. Because I'm not hiding. I'm not scared to be visible. I kept my voice calm. "Courtney, when did you last eat?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know." "Yesterday? And the baby? She's okay. There's a church that gives out formula Tuesdays and Thursdays. She wasn't okay." I could hear it, that exhaustion beyond tired, that resignation from being afraid so long she'd forgotten what safety felt like. "Where are you right now?" "A shelter. 3 nights a month if you have a baby. After that, ... She trailed off. "After that, you're back on the street." "Yeah." I closed my eyes. My daughter, sleeping in shelters, rationing food, too terrified to apply for help, because every form was another way for Andrew to find her. The trust, the hospital records they're all just paper, I said quietly. And paper can be changed. Andrew doesn't have real power over you. He has the illusion of power, because you've been too afraid to challenge it. It's not an illusion when he can freeze my credit and call my employers. He can only do those things if you stay invisible. But the moment you step into the light, the moment you file your own paperwork, he loses his advantage. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying. But you can't live like this forever. And your daughter can't grow up watching you hide. She was quiet. I could hear sounds in the background, people coughing, a baby crying, fluorescent lights humming. Andrew said, "You don't understand what you're interfering with?" she said finally. "He's wrong. I understand exactly. And I'm not stopping. Even if it makes things worse, it can't get worse than this. You're homeless with you're too scared to see your own mother in public. Arnold's in another state and still controls your life." My voice cracked. "So let me try to make it better. What if they go after you? Then they go after me. But I'm not the one with a baby to protect. I can take the hit." Long silence. "There's something else," Courtney said. "Arnold doesn't just threaten. He has someone here. Someone watching me. Every time I find a new place to sleep, he knows within days. He sends messages, 'I heard you were on 5th Street, or that church seems nice.' Just enough to let me know he's watching." My blood ran cold. "You think Andrew has someone following you?" "I don't know. Maybe they're tracking the phone, the deposits. I don't know how it works." She sounded exhausted. "But if you start tearing down their system, if they think you're a threat, let me worry about that. I can't lose you too." The words hit like a punch. "You haven't lost me. I'm right here. I pushed you away. I pretended I didn't know you. I've been avoiding you for 3 years because I was afraid they'd use you against me. Now we fix it. Together." I wiped my eyes. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know if I remember how. Start small. Just sleep tonight. Take care of the baby, and know you're not alone anymore. Okay. Call me tomorrow if you need to. I'll keep the phone on." "Mom, yeah, thank you." "For not giving up?" She hung up before I could respond. I sat in the dark, holding the phone, thinking about everything she'd said. Someone was watching her, reporting to Arnold and Andrew, maintaining their control, which meant confronting Andrew had probably been a mistake. Now they knew I was involved. But maybe that was okay. Maybe if they watched me, they'd pay less attention to Courtney. I sent texts to Ryan and Grace. She called. "New developments?" Grace responded. "That's progress." I tried to sleep but couldn't stop thinking about my daughter somewhere in this city, holding her baby in a shelter, too afraid to do anything that might alert the men who'd trapped her. Tomorrow, we'd figure out the next step. Tonight, I just promised myself I wouldn't stop until Courtney could walk down the street without fear. Not until she could say my name in public. Not until Andrew and Arnold learned that underestimating an old woman was their biggest mistake. Ryan called me 3 days later with news. The motion was granted. Trust is frozen pending investigation. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee cup halfway to my mouth. That fast. The judge heard the voicemail, heard about the hospital records, called it pattern of coercive control. Ryan sounded pleased with himself. Andrew and Arnold were served yesterday. They have 10 days to respond. What happens now? Now we wait for them to make their move. File a counter motion. Probably claim everything was voluntary, that you're overstepping. He paused. "Florence, you need to be ready. They're going to come at you hard. Let them." That afternoon, I got the first call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Mitchell." Male voice. Professional. Cold. "This is Marcus Vance, attorney for Andrew and Arnold Brennan." I'm calling regarding the frivolous motion you filed against my clients. It's not frivolous. That's debatable. My clients have documentation showing Courtney Mitchell voluntarily established these financial arrangements. What you've done is interfere in legal agreements between adults. His tone shifted, became almost gentle. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're concerned about your daughter, but from what my clients tell me, there may be some confusion on your part about the nature of these arrangements. There it was. The suggestion I was confused. Too old to understand? I'm not confused, Mr. Vance. Of course not. But perhaps you're not aware of all the facts. Courtney has had some difficulties, mental health challenges. My clients have been trying to help her, provide structure by threatening her, by tracking her location, by keeping her trapped in a system where she can't access help without them knowing. Silence. Then those are serious allegations. Do you have proof? I have the voicemail. I have bank records. I have hospital forms. Forms that Courtney signed willingly. Mrs. Mitchell, if you pursue this, you're going to hurt your daughter more than help her. The trust provides her only stable income. You freeze that, she has nothing. He let that sink in. Is that what you want? To leave her and your grandchild destitute? My hands were shaking. What I want is for her to be free. She is free. She's free to access the trust anytime. She's free to contact my clients for assistance. She's chosen not to do those things. Which suggests perhaps the problem isn't the system, it's her relationship with you. The words stung because they were designed to. Because that's what they'd argue in court. Overprotective mother, troubled daughter, family drama. Tell your clients I'm not backing down. Mrs. Mitchell, I strongly advise you to reconsider. My clients are prepared to file a countersuit for harassment and defamation. They're prepared to seek a restraining order preventing you from interfering further. And they're prepared to demonstrate in court that your actions stem from a related cognitive decline. There it was. The real threat. Are you seriously suggesting I'm senile? I'm suggesting that stress can affect judgment, particularly in older individuals who may not fully comprehend complex financial arrangements. His voice was smooth, practiced. No one wants this to get ugly, Mrs. Mitchell. Withdraw the motion. Let the adults handle their own affairs. And perhaps consider talking to your doctor about these concerns you've been having. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, rage burning through me. Cognitive decline, age-related confusion. They were going to paint me as a delusional old woman interfering in things she didn't understand. Grace arrived 20 minutes later. I'd texted her after the call. They're going to claim I'm incompetent, I said. I know, Ryan warned me. They might try that. She sat at my kitchen table. Florence, you need to be prepared for this, to get nasty. They're going to bring up your age, question your memory, maybe even suggest you're being manipulated by Courtney. But I have documentation. I have proof, and they have lawyers who will argue that proof was obtained inappropriately, that you're misinterpreting it, that you're seeing patterns that aren't there. Grace looked at me steadily. This is what abusers do when they're cornered. They attack credibility. My phone rang again. Different number. Don't answer it, Grace said. But I did. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Detective Sarah Chun, County Family Services. I received a complaint that you've been harassing family members and making unfounded accusations. I'd like to ask you some questions. My stomach dropped. They called the police. Actually, we received a wellness check request. Someone's concerned about your mental state, suggested you might be experiencing confusion or distress. Her voice was kind, which somehow made it worse. Is there someone there with you? A family member or caregiver? I don't need a caregiver. I need you to listen, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm just trying to help. But I need to verify a few things. Can you tell me today's date? They were doing a competency check. On me? Because Andrew and Arnold had called in a wellness concern about a confused elderly woman making wild accusations. Today is Thursday, November 14th. I'm 67 years old. I live alone. I worked for county clerk's office for 32 years. And I'm not confused. My voice was steel now. What I am is a mother trying to protect her daughter from financial abuse. I understand you believe that. I don't believe it. I know it. I have bank records showing a trust account being used for surveillance. I have hospital forms with emergency contacts that should have been removed years ago. I have a voicemail of Courtney's ex-husband threatening her. I was standing now, pacing. And instead of investigating that, you're calling me to ask if I know what day it is. Detective Chun was quiet. Then, Mrs. Mitchell, send me what you have. Everything. If there's genuine abuse happening, we'll investigate. Will you really? Or will you listen to their lawyers who'll say, I'm a confused old woman. Send me the evidence. So let me see for myself. I hung up and looked at Grace. They're trying to discredit me before we even get to court. I know. But, Florence, you just handled that perfectly. You were clear, factual, strong. Grace squeezed my hand. You're not giving them anything to use against you. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Back off, or we make this worse. You're embarrassing yourself. I showed it to Grace. Save that, she said immediately. Screenshot it, forward it to Ryan. That's evidence of intimidation. I did, hands still shaking. Another text came through, this time from a number I recognized. Courtney. Mom. Please stop. They're saying horrible things about you. They're going to prove you're not competent, and then I'll lose you too. My heart broke. They're using her against me. Of course they are. That's the playbook. Grace stood up. But here's what they don't know. Every time they contact you, every threat they make, every attempt to discredit you, it's more evidence. They're building your case for you. She was right. But it didn't make it hurt less. Because somewhere, Courtney was reading whatever lies Andrew and Arnold were feeding her. Believing her mother was falling apart, believing this was all making things worse. And I couldn't even tell her the truth without putting her in more danger. I looked at Grace. What do? You document everything. You stay calm. You let them underestimate you. She smiled grimly. And you wait for them to make a mistake. What if they don't? They will. Men like Andrew and Arnold, they always do. Because they're so certain they're smarter than everyone else. Especially women, especially older women, that they get careless. I hoped she was right. Because right now, it felt like I was losing. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning in a small administrative courtroom that smelled like old wood and anxiety. Ryan met me outside, carrying a banker's box full of documents. You ready? I nodded, though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Remember what we talked about? Stay calm, answer only what's asked. Don't let them bait you. He looked at me carefully. They're going to try to make you seem confused or emotional. Don't give them that. Inside, Andrew and Arnold sat at the opposite table with their lawyer, Marcus Vance. Andrew looked calm, almost bored. Arnold, I was seeing him for the first time in 3 years, looked annoyed, like this whole thing was beneath him. Neither of them looked at me. Courtney wasn't there. Ryan had explained she didn't have to be for this preliminary hearing. Part of me was relieved. Part of me wished she could see this. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Let's make this quick. I've read the briefs. Mr. Okafor, your motion alleges financial coercion and misuse of trust instruments. Mr. Vance, your response claims voluntary arrangements and family interference. Somebody convince me. Ryan stood. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of ongoing coercion. A voicemail from Mr. Arnold Brennan threatening the beneficiary. Hospital records showing emergency contacts maintained without consent. Bank records showing a trust structure designed to surveil rather than support. Vance stood smoothly. Your Honor, with respect. What we have is a family dispute being weaponized by an elderly woman who doesn't understand the legal arrangements her adult daughter voluntarily entered into. Mrs. Mitchell is 67, not incompetent, Ryan shot back. No one's suggesting incompetence. Just unfamiliarity with complex financial instruments. Vance smiled. It's understandable. These matters can be confusing for people without legal or financial backgrounds. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Mitchell, do you understand what a trust is? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. It's a legal arrangement where assets are managed by a trustee for a beneficiary's benefit. In this case, Andrew Brennan manages the trust, but uses it to monitor my daughter's location and activities. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. I glanced at Ryan, who pulled out the printed bank statements. Every month, a deposit from Brennan Property Solutions triggers an automatic statement sent to Andrew's address. That statement includes my daughter's current address, transaction history, any account changes. Vance jumped in. Which is standard practice for trust management. It's surveillance, I said. My voice was steady now. My daughter is homeless because she's too terrified to update her information anywhere official. She knows if she does, Andrew will see it and tell Arnold. The judge leaned forward. Let me hear this voicemail. Ryan played it. Arnold's voice filled the courtroom. I know where you are. Andrew's keeping me updated. You pull any shit, you try to make yourself visible, I'll take everything. Silence. Then the judge said, that's not a supportive family member. That's a threat. It's taken out of context, Vance said quickly. Mr. Arnold Brennan was frustrated with his ex-wife's instability. I couldn't help it. She's unstable because you've trapped her. Mrs. Meachild, the judge warned. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but they've built a system where she can't get help without them knowing. Can't apply for housing, can't use social services, can't even come to the hospital without Arnold being notified. They've made it impossible for her to be free. Vance stood again. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell is clearly emotional about this situation, which is understandable. But emotion doesn't change the facts. Courtney Mitchell signed these documents. She agreed to this arrangement. If she's unhappy with it now, she's free to revoke, is she? The judge cut him off. Because from what I'm hearing, every time she tries to access systems that might help her revoke these arrangements, your clients are notified. How is that freedom? Vance hesitated. The trust was established for her protection from what? From being able to live her life. The judge looked at the documents in front of her. I'm seeing a pattern here, Mr. Vance. And it's not protection. It's control. Andrew leaned over and whispered something to Vance. Your Honor, Vance said carefully, my clients are willing to modify the trust terms. Remove the automatic notifications. Transfer management to a neutral third party, so you admit the current structure is problematic. We admit nothing. We're simply willing to compromise to resolve this family matter. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Mitchell, what do you want here? I took a breath. I want my daughter free. I want Arnold's name removed from every official record. I want the trust either closed or transferred to someone who isn't using it to track her. And I want her to know she can come out of hiding without being punished for it. Your Honor, that's Vance started. I'll tell you what it is. The judge interrupted. It's reasonable. Mr. Vance, here's what's going to happen. The trust remains frozen. Within 30 days, your clients will provide documentation showing Arnold Brennan has been removed from all medical records, financial accounts, and official contacts related to Courtney Mitchell. The trust will be transferred to an independent trustee selected by the court, not by your clients. Your Honor, that's excessive, and Mr. Vance, if I find out your clients have contacted Courtney Mitchell or Mrs. Florence Mitchell in any way that could be construed as intimidation, I'll hold them in contempt. Are we clear? Vance's jaw tightened. Yes, Your Honor. Good 30 days. Next hearing is December 15th. She banged her gavel. Dismissed. I stood there, not quite believing what had just happened. Ryan was grinning. We won! We won! First round. Yeah. She saw right through them. He started packing up documents. Florence, you were perfect. Calm, factual, clear. Everything they said about you being confused or emotionally you disproved it just by being yourself. Across the room, Andrew and Arnold were arguing in whispers with Vance. Arnold's face was red. Andrew looked furious. As they left, Andrew glanced back at me. The look in his eyes was pure hatred. He's going to retaliate, I said quietly. Let him. Every move he makes now, we document. The judge is watching. Ryan put a hand on my shoulder. You did it, Florence. You broke their system. Outside the courthouse, I called Grace. The trust is frozen. They have to remove Arnold from everything. Oh my God. Florence, that's huge. Is it enough? It's a start. Now Courtney can apply for help without them tracking her. She can get housing assistance, food stamps, real support. Grace paused. Have you told her? Not yet. I don't know if she'll even believe me. She will. Give her time. I sat in my car for a long time after that, just breathing. 30 days. That's how long Andrew and Arnold had to dismantle the surveillance network they'd spent years building. 30 days for Courtney to realize she could finally be visible. I started the engine and drove home. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. But I also felt the weight of Andrew's stare. This wasn't over. They'd lost the first battle. But men like them don't accept losing. And I needed to be ready for whatever came next. 3 months later, I was sitting at the same stoplight on Maple Street when I saw her again. This time, she wasn't holding a sign. Courtney was crossing at the intersection, the baby Emma. I'd learned her name was Emma strapped to her chest in a proper carrier. She wore clean clothes, jeans, and a sweater that actually fit. Her hair was pulled back, and even from inside my car, I could see she looked different. She looked like she was breathing. The light turned red. I rolled down my window. Courtney. She turned, and for a second, I saw that same flash of fear. The old instinct to run, to hide, to pretend she didn't know me. Then it passed. She smiled. Hi, Mom. I pulled over, hazards on, not caring about the traffic. Got out and walked to her, and this time when I reached for her, she didn't back away. We stood there on the sidewalk, cars passing, and I held my daughter for the first time in 3 years. You look good, I managed. I got an apartment. Section 8 housing, but it's mine. My name on the lease, nobody else's. She adjusted Emma's carrier. Grace helped me with the paperwork. Made sure nothing flagged Andrew's systems. And Arnold? Con? The court order worked. His name's off everything, hospital, bank, all of it. Andrew had to transfer the trust to some neutral administrator who doesn't even know me. She laughed, but it was shaky. It's weird. I keep waiting for them to show up, to find some loophole. But they haven't. They won't. The judge is still monitoring compliance. We walked to a bench near the bus stop and sat. Emma was sleeping, her tiny hand curled against Courtney's chest. I'm sorry, Courtney said quietly, for that day. For pretending I didn't know you. You don't have to, I do. Because you could have walked away. You could have decided I wasn't worth the trouble. She looked at me. But you didn't. Even when they tried to make you look crazy. Even when I begged you to stop. You didn't. You're my daughter. I know. But I'd spent so long being invisible, I forgot what it felt like to have someone see me. She wiped her eyes. Andrew called me once after the hearing. Tried the old tricks, told me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret cutting them off, that nobody else would help me the way they did. What did you say? I said, my mom already helped me more than they ever did. Then I hung up. She smiled. He didn't call back. A man walked past us. Older, white hair, glasses. He glanced at Courtney, then at me. And I saw him do the math. Young woman, older woman, baby. His expression softened into something like approval. Your granddaughter? He asked. Yes, I said. Beautiful family. He nodded and kept walking. Courtney watched him go. That used to terrify me. Someone noticing us together, someone commenting. I was always so afraid it would get back to Arnold somehow. And now I'm just ... here. Visible. And it's okay. She looked down at Emma. I want her to grow up knowing she doesn't have to hide. That being seen isn't dangerous. It's not, I said firmly. Not anymore. We sat in silence for a while, watching people pass. The light changed from red to green to red again. Somewhere behind us, a bus hissed to a stop. I start work next week, Courtney said. Part-time at a grocery store. Grace knows the manager. Put in a word. It's not much, but it's yours. Yeah, it's mine. She shifted Emma slightly. And I'm taking an online class? GD prep. I never finished high school after everything with Arnold, but I'm going back. Pride swelled in my chest. That's wonderful. I figured if you could take on lawyers and judges at 67, I could finish high school at 32. She smiled at me. You showed me something, Mom. You showed me that paper isn't power. People are power. And when you stop being afraid of the paper, when you start building your own trail instead of hiding from theirs, you get free. Yeah. A woman in yoga clothes jogged past us, ponytail swinging. She looked like the woman from that first day, the one who'd tapped her temple and assumed I was confused. But this time, nobody looked at us like we were a problem. We were just a mother and daughter on a bench with a baby. Normal. Visible. Safe. There's something I need to tell you, Courtney said. Something I should have said years ago. What's that? You were right. About everything. About the trust, about Andrew, about how they were using the system against me. She took a breath. But more than that, you believed me. Even when I was too scared to believe myself, you knew something was wrong. And you fought for me anyway. Always. I know that now. She leaned her head on my shoulder, careful not to jostle Emma. I'm sorry it took so long. We stayed like that until the sun started to set, painting Maple Street in orange and gold. Eventually, Courtney stood. I should get home. Emma needs to eat, and I have to prep for my shift tomorrow. Call me this week. Every week, she promised. No more hiding. I watched her walk away, confident now, her shoulders back. She turned at the corner and waved. I waved back. Then I got in my car and drove home. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't worried about my daughter. Because she wasn't invisible anymore. She existed in the world on a lease, on a work schedule, in a classroom, on a sidewalk. And Arnold and Andrew couldn't touch her. The system they'd built to trap her had been dismantled, piece by piece, form by form, document by document, by a 67-year-old woman they'd assumed was too old to understand. I smiled at that. Because they'd been wrong about a lot of things. But mostly, they'd been wrong about underestimating the power of a mother who refused to let her daughter disappear. Justice hadn't been loud or dramatic. It had been quiet and thorough and relentless. And in the end, that was enough. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever lived through something like this,